So we were on the topic of smoking weed before and just how that really paved the way for clear thinking and being able to properly evaluate where where I want to go is a big word because no one really knows until you try any steps that are available. But yeah, I mean, did that for like 2 years maybe. But then at some point, it was just like, you just cannot be dependent on something, It's like Alan Watts had a very great metaphor about this. It's like when you cross a river, you can use a raft to cross to the other side of the river. However, you shouldn't be it'd be stupid to still carry the raft when you're already on the other side of the river and you're walking on land. So yeah, just to explain that analogy, which is pretty obvious, like the weed could be the raft or anything, it could be anything that helps you like just as a scaffold or something. There's no point in bringing that because the job is done.
It served you. It
Yeah,
served its purpose, and you let it go.
Yeah.
Emerge Stories is a place where, as the name implies, you are going to hear stories. Stories from people all over the Philippines who have come from many different types of backgrounds, and especially people who have gone through struggles, people who have gone through the challenging parts of life. And I hope that these stories will relate for you in some way, that some of these stories will really land for you because these people have gone through probably just about the same thing you might be going through right now. Welcome back to Emerge Stories. Today, we are joined by Miguel Sa-a. He is somebody I think who has a really special story and someone who I've been able to witness over the last number of years totally transform himself all the time. Miguel takes extreme ownership of who he is becoming, and he's really good at building habits. Like Miguel has very consistent habits of learning, of meditation, of taking care of his physical health, and he's just also really an open-minded thinker. Takes so much ownership of his life. He is from Cebu, but now lives in the Netherlands, where he got hired by a tech startup. And I've just had the pleasure of working with Miguel and getting to know him and watching him grow. And I find him to be just a fascinating person that I've learned a lot from. So I hope you guys agree with me. One of my favorite quotes from Miguel is he said, he thinks it's better to think for yourself and be wrong than to outsource your thinking or just leave your thinking to other people's opinions. So I really hope you guys get a lot from this conversation. And as always, if you do, please share this with somebody that you think should hear it. Also, we love your feedback. So please comment, give us your thoughts. If you think you can maybe point us in the direction of somebody we should be interviewing, or if you think there's something we can do to improve the content that we're creating, we would just love to hear from you. Thank you so much for being here. Let's jump in. Welcome, Miguel, to the Emerge Philippines podcast. I'm super, super excited to have this conversation today, especially because I don't get to talk to you that much anymore. How are you?
Good. First of all, yeah, thanks for having me. And like I told you before this call, it's this interview. I've never had done anything like this. And I'm just going to treat it like we're two friends talking at a bar and just hanging out. So
Too bad we're not actually at a bar, but otherwise it's all true.
you have a better background though. So
Yeah. For a little context, I decided I'm going to start making backgrounds specific to the people who I'm interviewing. So if you ever want to know what the hell is up with this background, you have to ask Miguel. All right. So where are you joining us from so that people know?
Yeah. So I'm now living in Amsterdam, but for a little backstory, I was born and raised in Cebu, Philippines. Last year in February, I moved here because of my girlfriend. Yeah. We met in Bali in 2019. We were both traveling. And then after that, she visited me in the Philippines and I visited her, and it just happened every year. And at some point, I just realized, I want to take it a huge step further. And then, yeah, I decided to move. And now I'm working for a tech company here in Amsterdam. And yeah, never looked back.
And what's the work that you do for that tech company?
Yeah, so I'm an account manager for a data company. It's a data on startups and scale-ups that covers worldwide. And it also provides a market intelligence for investors or anyone who was interested in looking at trends in the startup and scale-up space.
Nice. Very cool. I've been following that journey a bit, and I'm really excited for you and kind of all the things that have happened for you lately. But so going back a bit to kind of your journey that has led you to where you are, and keeping in mind that this conversation's geared toward people that are from where you're from. So maybe in Cebu or anywhere in the Philippines, people that would potentially relate with you. What was your kind of, where did you start out? What was your upbringing like living in Cebu? Tell us about what was it like being a kid, your school years? What kind of journey did you have as a young guy?
Yeah. So where do I start? Well, I grew up in a typical Filipino family, if you want to call it. Like I did go to a pretty good school. My family was there always like to support me and everything, basically just following everything they say. And as a kid, I've always had like different interests that seemed odder than what my friends had. So for instance, like my taste in music was different. My yeah, just I had a lot of creative thoughts, but I somehow couldn't really pursue them because I couldn't really focus that much. But I'll get into the specifics of what those topics are. But for instance, when I was a kid, I do even remember like writing a couple of books that somehow now my parents have in their, what do you call this, like a locker of theirs. So this is really something
The
that
Miguel box.
when they found it and then they showed it to me, I was like, yeah, this is really embarrassing. But I actually didn't read it, the contents, but I actually made a book before. But it was more of like a lot of images and some text in there. That was really like a short like a slight hint of what some interests of mine were.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really like one important thing that I do remember. Well, I did forget, but was just recently reminded of that I wanted to do, but I couldn't really put a lot of energy into it because there was a lot happening. When you go to school, like friends, none of the kids would want to do that. Everyone just wants to play, and we all want to be a businessman or something. And I also was okay. No, we follow everyone. I kind of left that behind.
Okay.
And
So like
yeah, sorry.
roughly what age were you when you started, let's say, moving away from the things that used to draw you? So you had these creative aspirations or creative, juices flowing in you, but then culture, what other people expect you to want, you started to kind of head in those directions. Like roughly what age are you talking about when that happened?
Ooh, it's hard to say. Could be 7 to 10, yeah.
That's
It's,
fine.
it's hard for me to say.
That helps. That's enough range
That
anyway.
definitely was yeah, it's hard to think clearly at that age, and especially like I mentioned before, like thinking clear at that age was just really not in the cards for me because I was super frenetic. I'm easily distracted. Like I have a lot I can pursue different things, but I can not put my attention in one thing for longer than, who knows, 5
And
minutes.
and I remember you telling me more about this before. Is like, so that attention, that challenge of holding your attention in one place was causing you challenges in school, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like tell us
So
more
that
about
led,
that.
a lot of science talk about, left brain, right brain. My left brain, like more of the logic, the math or something was like non-existent. I couldn't follow conversation properly. I couldn't read properly. It wasn't that like I was dyslexic or anything, but my attention span was just really poor. So I would read something and then my attention would just go to the end of the paragraph and then I'm suddenly lost and I feel insecure because I couldn't understand it and I'll just drop it, then I'll just do something else and then I'm distracted again and there's just bouncing around. But I was kind of good with, like short bursts of creative thought. Like I could come up with something, like I could solve a problem fast, but not like math problems, like more fun problems where it
Mm.
requires me to think outside the box, to
Mhm.
call it that. So I was
So
also
like,
like clever. So when I wanted something, like I don't know how I got it. I don't know how I got to what I needed to get it. So for instance, these also include bad things like being really good at lying or something. Because if you want something, you're going to do anything to get it. It
yeah.
doesn't matter. But yeah, going back to school and being distracted. Yeah, I really suffered that for who knows until my 20s actually. No, actually like just hitting my age 20, I guess. And then yeah, some another part of the story would be shared later, but it was really tough when you cannot just focus and put your attention in one thing.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've had those times where I couldn't read a book because it's like I go through rereading the same line over and over and over again, and I'm sure that's not a very good. That's as much as I can relate. Is like sometimes you just have this problem focusing where I can't read a whole paragraph because I just keep looping back on the same thing. Is it something kind of like that just all the time, or is that a similar experience?
I think worse. Yeah, I mean, just imagine doing that and then rereading it again. and not even having a
Still,
chance.
yeah.
Yeah, like this is way too much. When I think back, I'm like, I never actually properly read a book until I was like 20.
Okay.
Or if I did before, I thought I did, but clearly I just wasn't. Yeah.
And so, I'm gonna spoil things a little bit here and say, like, Miguel is of the many, 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 many people I know in the world, and definitely in the Philippines, like Miguel reads so much now and is so committed to learning and growing all the time. So I'm really curious to dig out the story of, how you went from that to who you are now. So you're in school, your parents are providing good education. Talk to us a little bit about kind of what, when our parents are providing us a good education, kind of like that path and what's expected and kind of how you felt maybe about any of the expected path that you were on. Love to hear kind of that part of the story.
Yeah. So let's just fast forward to college, but we're just going to give the backstory later. But let's just focus on, yeah, finishing college, which was very easy in my opinion, because I was just having fun and it didn't really bring out the best in me because, like I said, I was just clever. I basically just cheated my way out of it.
Gaming, you were gaming the system.
Sorry, yeah, yeah, you can game the
Okay.
system. Like,
Yeah.
for instance, yeah, like exams. There's just a way to pass, even if you don't study. But that's not the important part of the story. But finishing school, you have a path where, oh, obviously you're gonna work or you're gonna build a business. But luckily, my parents had a lot of friends, so they also helped me get a job and get a good job. So I started my first job at a bank working sales. It was really nice. It was, I learned what it's like to show up on time and really like, okay, this is how, a corporate world works. But it also felt like there was something missing there. Like it really did also require me to be the best version of myself in a way. Like I wasn't really sure, like, because it felt, there was definitely some challenges because with sales, you have to hit a target and, you have to try to win your clients and everything. Yeah, but I felt like it was fun, but I had to also take a break and figure out something that I really want, which I really don't know what I wanted. So I basically did you know, quit your job and travel for a bit. And then, yeah, we can talk about like how we met. And then I actually learned what it's like to really properly think and, yeah, work closely with like people who actually build stuff and people who actually care about making an impact or helping people. So that really changed my perspective. I know I'm jumping through topic
Okay.
to topic. I think going back to your main question of like how your parents expect a path for you, I think it's hard for people to already pursue what path they want unless they try that other path when they don't actually have anything set up for themselves. Or if they don't know what they want yet, then you don't have any other choice than to follow what is available. However, once you follow that, you just also have to be honest if it's time to diverge and like, okay, do something else. But yeah, it's hard to do anything else when you also know you yourself don't know what to do. So I just had to try it. I tried their path because I was available, and then yeah, then I figured out it's time to do something else or take a break first.
How much courage was required on your part? And like, so your parents put you through school, and I'm curious to go back in a bit and see if there's part of that story of school that you still want to tell that we might have skipped over. But you graduate college because you learned how to be a social, like you were good at social stuff and you're good at gaming the system, whatever it took, right? And then so you graduate, and because of connections, you get this job. But then you got to this point where you just realized it wasn't what you wanted to be doing. So what kind of courage did it take to be like, how did you decide to take a break or stop doing that when it was a job that your mom got you? Like, was that hard at all?
Well, no, because well, I'll give it the full context. So when I was in college, I did an internship in the US. So before I was lucky enough to be able to do that. So it was like my third year. So we have 4 years in college. It was my third year and it was the second semester. And I got an internship in the US to work as a, yeah, like on the regular sales job in the southern part of Alabama. It's a city called Gulf Shores.
Gulf Shores, Alabama.
It was literally like a dream. We had a house full of students. You can just imagine it's close to the beach, spring break and summertime. So I was there from March. I lived there from March to like, yeah, for 4 months from starting March. And really, it was a dream. So I lived with my friend. We had a room and yeah, we were working 5 or 6 days a week at this surf shop. And then, yeah, it was a dream. Like People would come in, spring break, they were so drunk. Girls were in bikinis. It was really fun. And then obviously that was the first time in my life that I sort of moved out, because in the Philippines, if you don't know, we do live with our families
Yep.
and yeah, it was like my first taste of freedom, moving out, and literally like no one's gonna tell you what to do. You can wake up, well, if it's your day off, of course, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, wake up as late as you want and really just drink and party as much as you want. So really, there was a lot of freedom there. And that this was actually also, well, and now I'm starting to remember more. In the Philippines, we also don't work when we were in high school or in college. We don't have to, basically. Well, at least depends on what your family
Yeah.
situation is. But that was also the first taste of money that I had. So I basically had the freedom, I had the money, I had the space. So it was super fun. But also this time, I was still in my frenetic state where I was also very distracted,
Okay.
and nothing has changed. That's still
ADHD or something sort of like that?
diagnosed,
Okay.
self-diagnosed.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so in that house, everything was possible. And of course, my friends and I, this was the first time that I've smoked weed before in the Philippines, but I didn't really feel it because there was a lot of stuff going on also, like, oh, is the cops going to knock in like 5 seconds? Or, am I going to die or something if it's your first time? So you couldn't really feel stuff in a way because, yeah, you're overthinking. However, in the US, when I had my own house, well, I didn't own the house, but I had my own room. I had all the freedom that I wanted. And I had basically nothing to fear because it's not legal there, but it's close to being legal. And I actually, for the first time, felt when I smoked it, obviously, that my brain like just stopped, but not like die in a way, but just like stop. I could like freeze frame time, and then I felt like, wow, there is a there. Like I could really feel that I felt sane for the first time, if you want to phrase it like that. Like, you drink alcohol, sometimes
Right.
you feel like when you have your 10th beer, okay, you're feeling good. But this, within like a flick of a switch, you're like, ew. But I
Clarity.
think this experience varies from person to person. Like if you have a really like frenetic brain like me, then you would really feel like the effects like instantly. You would feel it. Like with one puff, you get like, you just time stops.
Wow.
And then first time I could follow a conversation, then I could feel things better. I could hear things better. Yeah, it was nothing much happened there, but that just that epiphany really opened a lot of doors that just never closed from there. And then yeah, obviously once you have a taste of that, you're like, okay, one more, one more, one more. Because just imagine coming from that very unstable and like just very chaotic state of mind, like a monkey mind, and then boom, just having this full Buddha experience for the first time in your life. So yeah, I just carried on with that, had so much fun with it. And yeah, when I came back to the Philippines, I obviously didn't want to break the habit. Yeah, because when I have it, I'm like sane and life felt normal for the first time.
So it really helped you and taught you what it
So
was like to have kind of a clear, stable mind or, not bouncing around. So it's really interesting how, the world is really changing in our ways of looking at these things. If anybody is curious, I would highly recommend watching How to Change Your Mind, the documentary on Netflix by Michael Pollan. It's so enlightening about how the
like,
US, it's so good. And how,
I've read the book,
yeah,
but I haven't.
good.
I should.
It's so quick to understand how the war on drugs was started by President Nixon in the US and like all this demonization of natural things like natural plant ingredients that really can have benefit for us. Of course, there's ways to abuse them, but they can really have benefits, and they've been demonized in culture for kind of no reason. But anyway, so it's really cool to hear that. I have not really had experience, not very many experiences with weed, but so that kind of happened out of nowhere. I'm just really curious, just going to the US, first time living alone,
Yeah.
just for a second, I would love to pull on two threads. One is, tell us one or two things about the US that were surprising, maybe in not such a good way. Like what were some things you found out about the US that were not what you expected, or, less than you expected? Was there anything?
Oh, I don't want to speak badly
Come on,
about
come on,
America,
come on. I'm American.
but I don't know. Just a lot of people there. Like, there's a lot of competition in the U.S. You can see that with business, with people. So people tend to act like they try to drink so much, they try to smoke a lot more than they can.
Kind of showing off.
That hasn't changed in my opinion, by the way. I still have that impression with Americans. Like there's always that, like, well, what are you doing? That's something very different with the Europeans, actually, now that I'm living here. That's one very different thing about Americans and Europeans. Like Europeans are very like straightforward and, oh, not everyone, of course, but I'm just talking
Yeah,
about
yeah,
like,
generalizations. Yeah.
yeah, generalization. Yeah. So Americans sometimes it's a bit, contrived the way they act in public. Because, like I said, there's so much competition. So people also want to surface above the
Mm,
norm. So
okay.
that's definitely one thing, and that hasn't changed. So you said two things. Another, like, this is a better side of them. Like a lot
Sure.
of people take risks. That's what I like. Oh, but this is also part of their way of rising above the norm. Because when there's so much competition, it encourages people to be themselves, not in a so good way, but it also encourages them to take more risks and like be bold or something. So I guess both go hand in hand.
They're the two sides of the coin. No, the reason I asked that question is just because ever since I went to Japan when I was 19, I started seeing this tendency for people from other countries to think the US is like, the roads are paved with gold or something, like it's so good there. And I'm like, no, there's a lot of things that suck and it's not always better. And I hear people in the Philippines so often saying, here in the Philippines, I'm like, no, no, no. Like here on Earth, like there's so many of the same problems that, that are existing in culture and people that exist there too. And I just, that's why I asked that, so that, just to share your experience. But the other thing I wanted to ask about is, what have you learned about learning? What have you learned about living alone? Like what advantages or learnings have come from those experiences of living alone for the first time or any time after?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So this goes beyond living alone, but I would really like to focus on like the word freedom. So when someone has freedom, they also, even if they don't know it or consciously notice it, they can think a lot clearer. So one example I can give here is like, I can just use one very easy example, like alcohol. If it's so stigmatized, people tell you like, okay, you cannot drink. When you're 18, before 18, it's the best time to drink because you cannot, get it. And it's always nice to get something you shouldn't be getting. And you finally drink, and then you can't really think clearly about the experience because, you got it in an illegal way. So it should be fun. So there's the term should, I should enjoy it. And you definitely will enjoy it, but it's not a clear experience. So this like also ties into like freedom of living alone, like having that space. So for instance, like the story about weed and smoking, like when the first time I did it, I wasn't free. I couldn't feel it properly because I didn't have the space to actually like really let the experience marinate.
Yeah.
But with living alone and being able to do these things with unlimited freedom, so you're able to smoke or whatever drink and feel the full experience. You can also feel the high properly, but you also feel the hangover or the crash. So they are, yeah, basically they're like one package.
I get it. Like I relate with that and it resonates with me, but just for anybody who might not immediately get what you mean experientially, is it kind of like, because it's 100% your ownership that you can fully evaluate it? It's like, okay, there's no expectations from anyone about whether I'm here to have fun or I don't have to act a part. I don't have to play a role. It's just me and I get to evaluate this and I can say, is this good? Is this bad? Is this helping me? Is it serving me? Or is it not serving me? And like you have that clear space to just evaluate something on its own merits without any other
Spot on.
data.
Yeah.
Okay.
One quick example I could see. So, a lot of people, in the tech space now in Silicon Valley, it's like a flex to say, oh, I don't drink alcohol. But I've thought about this a lot. Like, why are people doing this now? And then once you get to realize what is the like motivation behind that, it's because alcohol is legal. People can buy it everywhere. However, people can also feel the effects like fully. So these people probably, in the tech space, they drink a lot, they go out a lot, and then they feel like shit the next morning. And then you feel that enough times. And that's like proper feedback that you get to
Yeah.
yourself. Like you
Yeah.
suffer it, you suffer it properly. And then you can see, you can clearly say, okay, but this isn't serving me. Like, okay, I'm just going to drop it. But if it was illegal, I doubt it if people would start telling the world like, oh, I'm not going to drink anymore because it's so cool to get something that's not accessible. yeah, people have to feel it themselves. Like people have to suffer the consequences themselves. And it's almost impossible to suffer the consequences of something if there's no space to do it properly.
Yeah.
And this applies to everything in life, like drugs, alcohol, going broke, whatever. Like if you don't suffer it yourself, then you're never gonna change. It's just like a truth that's hard to dismantle, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've
So
learned.
going back to your question, the freedom of being able to live alone is, you just have to enjoy stuff. Like you have to be free to enjoy it, but you also have to be free to suffer the consequences, which is just the beauty of it. Because you also like enjoyment and like high and low, they go hand in hand. Yeah, two sides of the same coin.
So being able to spend more time alone allowed you to learn maybe in a environment where it's like you're free to learn because there's no peer pressure, there's no other influences. It's just you deciding like, okay, I've done this enough times. And we're not doing this whole story totally linearly, but just on that
Mm.
topic of the substances you've been discussing. Like, where are you at in your life with them now? What decisions, where have you, you're 27?
37, yeah.
You're 27. I hope you don't mind that I asked that, but
I still look
like
15. So.
you do. So like, where are you at with them now? Like, what's your current evaluation of how they serve you or don't or whatever? Just
Oh
curious.
yeah. So we were on the topic of smoking weed before and just how that really paved the way for clear thinking and being able to properly evaluate where I want to go. It's a big word because no one really knows until you try any steps that are available. But yeah, I mean, did that for like 2 years maybe. But then at some point it was just like, you just cannot be dependent on something, you know? It's like Alan Watts had a very great metaphor about this. It's like when you cross a river, you can use a raft to cross to the other side of the river. However, you shouldn't be it'd be stupid to still carry the raft when you're already on the other side of the river and you're walking on land. So yeah, just to explain that analogy, which is pretty obvious, like the weed could be the raft or anything, it could be anything that helps you like just as a scaffold or something. There's no point in bringing
It's
that because the job is done,
it served you. It
Yeah,
served
it's
its purpose and you let
service
it
break.
go.
Yeah. So
Nice.
yeah, at some point I just started exploring, you just go on social media, just or like research on the internet, and then meditation was starting to catch a lot of attention that time. I was like, oh, interesting, let me try it. And then obviously I did it first while I'm high because that's what one does. And then you just explore that more and more. And then you get to a point where you just do it without anything. And really, like the first time I did it, not everyone gets it right the first time, but I just felt it. I felt that my mind also slowed down, well, with weed, it's like, instant on off a
Yeah.
switch. But with meditation, it's more of like really allowing your body to cool down in a way. But then it's not a switch. You can just like, well, maybe at some point when it's really embedded in you. But yeah, just exploring meditation and
So
from
you were,
there, it wasn't an instant that transition of like, oh, I dropped it, instantly. No, it was
Mhm.
like, I was still taking it sometimes, but then slowly really seeing how good meditation was and how well it's like it's part of your operating system already that you don't have to seek anything else, which is really nice because if you're always seeking something, it always and not now we're gonna go into like the more spiritual part of the conversation where like you're not present at all. Because yeah, if you're seeking something, you're looking forward to the future or you're
yeah,
looking forward to reward or something.
yeah. Let's pause for a second. I want to just kind of recap what you were saying, and I think this is really cool. So you had this challenge in your young years where your brain was just all over the place, your mind was kind of a mess all the time, and you just had not really experienced a calm, serene state of being with your brain, right? And then weed gives
Yeah,
you that
better.
quickly. So it's like boom, it's like you said, like a switch. And then you kept relying on that for a while. But then it bridged you. It sounds like, I don't know, I'm rephrasing, but kind of bridged you to learn a practice or a skill of meditation that replaced it, that now gives you access to that state of your mind kind of anytime you need it. Is that fair?
That's absolutely spot on. Yeah, but
Okay.
I wouldn't have known that there was a there without having a full collision with it first. Like
Yeah.
I needed the evidence,
Needed to experience
even
it.
though I wasn't aware of it. Yeah, someone could have told this to me, a nice story, nice movie, and be like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's I
Yeah.
don't care about that. But once you have the full collision with that experience, it's like the door will be forever left ajar. And then, yeah, it just never closes. Like, that's it. Like, you cannot unsee or you cannot unfeel the
You,
feeling of freedom.
you
It's,
understand.
yeah, it's impossible to unsee or unfeel for
Yeah.
me.
The Greek, I think the Greek word was gnosis, Gnosis, which is to know like experientially instead of just cerebrally, conceptually. For anyone out there listening who has never really built a meditation practice, or maybe they've tried a little bit, maybe they've been hearing from other people that there's some benefits, but they still don't really, haven't experienced it yet. There's a lot of other stuff I still want to have time to talk about, but like share just quickly, like what has that done for you? And if you were talking to somebody who hasn't really gotten on that path, what would you recommend for them?
Honestly, man, I've been thinking about this a lot. And to be honest, nothing really works as a recommendation, but I would really start at a point where someone really has to have a problem first, or like someone has to suffer first. That it sounds bad or anything, but I can just pull someone out off the street and be like, hey, try this, interesting exercise. They might say yes, but they wouldn't be attracted to it if they're not like in my case, I was like neurotic and like I was just all over the place. And then I was just I couldn't be there in the world. Like I wasn't present at all because I was always like
Yeah.
my attention was everywhere. So you need that tension in a way. There has to be a reason
A pain.
for you to really like pursue and start looking for alternatives. Like, okay, there
Okay.
is a problem.
Well,
Like,
let's say,
I have a gambling problem. I have an alcohol problem.
right. I understand.
I'm getting overweight or something. There has to be a pain first. Like people have to have that pain. And
Okay.
then,
So let's
sorry,
say somebody has anxiety. Let's say somebody kind of notices that their anxiety is getting to them and they were like, "So maybe meditation would help me with that," or attention problems or whatever it is. Then what has worked for you? Like, how did you build a practice?
to be honest, really, I would never be able to build that practice without trying weed, to be honest. It would be very hard for me to get convinced that I would like, no, like this just looks so lame. It's like the most boring thing in the world, really.
Okay.
Once you get that taste, like once I had that taste, like all my skepticism disappeared. Like, okay, I know there's something there. Yeah, it's hard. I don't know. I cannot run the counterfactual. So
For me, I didn't have that experience. I've built a habit or built a practice of meditation based on experiencing, knowing how to access kind of a serene state of being has been a really powerful
it
thing to
had to
build.
be a pull for you there. Yeah. Were you feeling stressed or something?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
were you
yeah. No, I know. I'm not disagreeing with you that it's very likely that the reason somebody might start is that they've got a problem, is that they're really, whatever it is. But I'm saying I didn't start with weed. So let's say that introduced you to the experience. That introduced you to like, okay, this is what it feels like to feel that state. But I also know that after that, you still kind of built a habit, right? So I mean,
Mhm.
you could even just talk about habit building if you want, but it kind of like what would be you and I both have used the Waking Up app by Sam
Yep.
Harris, right?
Yep.
I know you introduced me to Alan Watts. You just quoted him a few minutes ago. Any tips that you would share with people of things that helped you in contemplating consciousness, or just any of that you want to talk about would be, I think, kind of interesting.
Oh yeah, actually, it reminds me of. I actually didn't start anywhere with a meditation app or something. I actually started with Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now book, audiobook.
Nice.
So yeah, that actually
Gladys is reading that right now, actually.
like pivotal moment where I was like, wow, this guy, like not even 20 seconds in, I was like, okay, I'm definitely gonna finish this 7-hour audiobook. But yeah, I think I started there actually before I even tried any meditation apps.
Cool.
So
Okay.
yeah, I just saw some quotes of him on Instagram and I'm like, this guy's got to have the best LSD or mushrooms in the world. Like his quotes just landed, when you read something and it's just like maybe 10 words or something like, how does he know this? And then once, because I already mentioned before, like I tasted that freedom. I had like the full experience or the full collision with the weed. And then my mind really like, okay, this is definitely a Zen state that I never knew existed. And then you read something like that, sober, and then you're like, wow, okay, this really lands. So then I just dug deeper, looked him up. It's like he looks it's like he's not selling you anything. He doesn't
Mhm.
care if you listen to him, but then he's just like speaking truth that he thinks works for him. And then definitely works with a million other people. He was even on Oprah show or something. And then I listened to the audiobook and it's like never looked back from there. Yeah, but just listening to that guy is like
Yeah.
very,
Totally. We'll put the link in the
yeah,
notes. Awesome. Cool.
yeah. The book was Power of Now. He has two books, but I started with a Power of Now, and yeah,
Yeah.
really, like it's impossible to exaggerate the impact that had on me. He actually will come to the Netherlands, and reminds me in October, and I have to get tickets. Yeah,
Oh,
have to.
cool. Very nice.
Crazy.
I'm excited for you. All right. So fast forward to you took some time off from, well, you basically just kind of bailed on the career that your mom set up for you. And then
Have it. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. I would
you
highly
wouldn't?
recommend.
You would.
Yeah.
Well,
I
I
would.
think, yeah. Okay. I was going to say, be honest. All right. So I'm going to tell my side of the story for a minute here. I get a
Yeah.
text because I know your dad, and he texts me and he's like, "Hey, could you get coffee with my son? He's really wayward." Something like that. And he's like, "Could you mentor him?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll meet your son and I meet you for coffee." And I remember your hair was kind of like much puffier then. You looked very chill, but I was really
Mm.
impressed. I was really impressed. I remember you were just clear thinker and you were curious and you just seemed like you're very interested in learning. And I don't remember specifically the things that caught my attention, but you caught my attention enough that I came back several months later and said, I'd really like to hire you. I think it'd be cool to work with you. Kind of like,
Good that you were drug testing people that time. Yeah.
yeah, we probably should be now.
Yeah.
Are we supposed to be? I don't know. Anyway, I have seen you turn yourself into such an incredibly dedicated self-teacher. Like you're just always reading, you're always learning new things, you're always putting ideas in. And I've seen it make, it's like you've just transformed, consistently evolved yourself and who you are. And that's one of the biggest reasons I wanted to invite you here for the conversations because I think you've just made the decision to take extreme ownership of your own growth. And so I'd really love to spend kind of the rest of our time here today talking about what do you think set you up for that? What was it that set you up to be the person that caught my attention? And what was it that set you up to take such advantage when you met people that connected you to these ideas? Because you just have run with them, like you just become that way. Anyway,
Yeah.
wherever you want
So
to go.
I think a good place to start there would be just going back to having the freedom to really do what you want. Well, in my situation, it was just not freedom that really actually gave me, whatever security. Not like not being accepting of yourself. This already is very loaded with the experience with weed, meditation, and just being able to be comfortable with who you are. Because once you sort of hit that point where you're pretty comfortable with who you are, and then you just stop wearing a mask in a way. And yeah, when I talked to you, like I had no incentive
Mm.
whatsoever to,
You,
you weren't hiring me
right.
yet. We were just having a conversation. I could just be myself, and I didn't really care if I couldn't give a shit if you don't like me after that because I had no incentive to impress you. So yeah, we're just having a conversation. I was just thinking out loud with you, and I guess maybe that's what caught your attention because I just
Yeah.
was my guard was down and
No swagger, no, maybe a tiny bit of swagger, but mostly just comfortable confidence and just being yourself. Yeah, it was just like yeah, you were just showing up there being truly yourself, very authentic, not trying to put on anything. That's a really good way to say it.
yeah.
But curious. I thought you were a curious person. I think you're like kind of like, what the hell am I doing here? But you were genuinely curious, and I think we had a interesting conversation. Do you remember anything about that conversation at all?
Yeah, what I really didn't expect there was that you just made like you were like holding a mirror in front of me. Like you were asking questions that made me think more. You weren't like telling me what to do. Because I really thought you would just tell me, like, read this book, take this course, save this amount of money. It's like I thought it was that gonna be that kind of conversation because who knows? I mean, I didn't really do my research or something. So no, I was really glad because I also had second thoughts of going, should I go? Maybe not, maybe yes. So yeah, I'm really glad that yeah, it's crazy. So I would always recommend to people, if anyone sets up a coffee or something, like it's so asymmetrical that you could lose an hour of your time, but the upside, you 10x,
Heck
100x or
yeah,
something.
man. Heck yeah. Meet people, meet new people all the time. You
People.
never freaking know when you're gonna meet somebody
Oh
that
yeah,
changes
that's
your life. Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
It really can take you places. So yeah, I would say going back to your question and like just how my experience went. Once you're pretty comfortable with who you are, kind of, this also ties into like self awareness and everything. Like a lot of people speak about self awareness and like how the most attractive people are self aware because, they are just themselves. They can make a joke out of themselves. Like they have good sense of humor because, yeah, they're really, their guard is down. They're just having fun. But they also like, you're not overstepping, you're not disrespecting people because, yeah, you like high self awareness, high emotional intelligence. I don't know. Maybe that's not too far away from each other. But yeah, well, once you have that security that you can cultivate through a lot of things, some people do yoga, some people take drugs or something, some people that do meditation, some people do everything. Yeah, I guess that really is a good place to start.
Cool. All right. And so how did like I said, I've seen that you've taken really strong ownership of your own growth. Like what was that journey like? Were you reading a lot before you met me? I don't remember. Okay.
Not
So like our company, Garrick and I, we really both, the reason we're friends and business partners is because we both really have a deep commitment to both believe in the power of constant self teaching and just learning all the time. And so being kind of introduced to that culture and being introduced to some idea, like what do you think were some of the memorable inflection points or things you got introduced to that kind of sparked that desire or that what got you hooked on that path?
Yeah, so I mean, going back to the coffee meeting we had, you told me, oh, you might be interested in, checking out a company, just speaking with yeah, introducing me to Garrett or something, but nothing, no concrete plans yet. And then you also told me, oh yeah, and a part of people's job is actually to read books. I'm like, nah, this can't be true. Like, this sounds too good to be true. But then that was actually very interesting because I don't know, maybe with all the time I had when I quit my job, I may have attempted to read some books and just really, I don't know, I just didn't have the motivation or something, or the motivation was not as strong for me to read a lot of books. But yeah, when I started working for Valhalla, you had a book list, recommendations, and then you also had the time. And then I don't know. I think that was really like the time when I could really say that I properly read a book. Because before I would read something and then I would just stop. Maybe I read it, but I never really understood it. So not I wouldn't really claim that I've read a book until I understood it. So that was really the time when
Do you
I
remember?
also enjoyed it. And so also going back to feeling like when you're secure, you're pretty comfortable with who you are. You can be very honest with yourself if you like something. And like in a way, you're interested in something. So a topic, for instance, like philosophy always was interesting to me. I did read like Eckhart Tolle's books, Alan Watts. I also read a couple of his books, which I thought I did, but I really didn't understand a huge part of it because he's such a clear writer, a smart guy. But then my level of comprehension that time was just not at that level yet. So yeah, I just reread. I've actually reread a lot of his books, and definitely the experience was different. So I guess to answer your question now, I think I have it. It's like the way you enjoy reading, the way you can read is to just enjoy, choose the books that you enjoy. I think Naval had a quote like, read what you love until you love to read or something
Nice.
like that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
And
I
then
love it.
yeah,
Okay.
he's like one of the guys I really follow. But yeah, reading really changes your life because it also goes back to being honest about the first, like it started with the topic that you
Mm.
chose. And next would be being very, like the more you read, the more you realize what your level of comprehension is. I know it's hard to pin down for every person, but internally, it's like an invisible threshold that you cross and you're like, okay, I did not understand that. And if you're
Yeah.
humble enough to reread a whole chapter, like I did this a lot when I started, like I would read something, I don't understand it. I would read again and again. And then I would even just stop, go Google or something just because you are confronted. There's just no place to hide. Like you can lie to yourself that you understood something, but there's no social pressure for you to say like, "Oh, I understood it," because really you are just it's like a single player game. You're
Yeah.
reading something and you're like, "Okay, I didn't understand that," and just go on. But
Nice.
reading can be very different if someone forces you to read something.
Yeah.
If someone forces you a topic on you, like, okay, read history, and you really don't give a shit about history,
Yeah.
or read about yeah.
So
But those can be really helpful towards the higher level already when you've read like so many books and you know what it's like to digest a book. Then it can be actually when now I'm reading like contracts for work or something, it can be interesting too. Like it's so boring, but you just see like, okay, what is the message here or something. But yeah, just start reading what you love. It doesn't matter what the topic is. It can really be like fiction, nonfiction.
yeah, I totally agree with that. I think even if you just start with fiction, find something you love, build the habit of reading, and kind of grow from there. Yeah, it's really amazing. All right, cool. Well, you've shared, I think, a bunch of really useful things so far. There's several other topics I would really love to get to. I just had actually an idea while we're talking
Yep.
that maybe as we build out Emerge, we might do some content that would be kind of members only. And I'm going to ask you some stuff after we finish here and have it recorded. And then if we ever make that available to like the community. But for today, I think we're running a little bit low on time and I want to let you get back to your Saturday. So, one of the questions I want to ask you about later offline is how does a Filipino guy land a foreign girlfriend like you did? It's pretty cool. You gotta
Yeah.
give some tips on that. You wanna share a little bit? Like, what do you
Of course,
think?
yeah.
What do you think? How'd that happen?
Well, I was already traveling in the Philippines. So I did, oh, okay. When I was working at the bank, I would literally use up most, if not all of my holidays in Siargao. So just, to hang out, surf, yeah, smoke weed, and have fun. And yeah, it was very interesting because that place attracts a lot of people
Yeah,
from all over.
all over the place.
And yeah, I felt like I stayed in hostels a lot also because it's cheap and it's fun. So I was like,
Yeah,
why not? And really, it opened a lot of doors for me. Like I met people who were like traveling for like 6 months,
yeah.
people like taking a year off. And I'm like, I only have 2 weeks of holiday in a year. Like,
Mhm.
how is this fair? That really just opened up a lot of stuff in terms of like traveling. Also, like, yeah, just talking to different people, different cultures. There were a lot of foreigners there. Yeah, I just learned how to interact and just,
Would you recommend staying in hostels, people?
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Me too.
I think that's, yeah, that would be
And
indispensable.
but I've seen people stay in hostels and then they don't talk to anyone, and I'm like, that's not the point. So how did you? Clearly, you were, you know, meeting people while you're staying in hostels, right?
Yeah.
So you strike up conversations with strangers.
See, the best thing about that is that no one knows you there and you don't know anyone yet. So really everyone's starting like from blank slate. And
So
then
you can be anyone.
you can be yourself. That's the best part. Like really, like your friends are, I would add just one thing. I would highly recommend doing it alone. Don't do it with a friend.
100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Don't do it.
I I should have said that more explicitly. It's like it doesn't count if you're with somebody. You
Yeah,
have to
because
you
you
have to
have
travel
like
alone, stay
fall
at a
back buddy.
hostel.
You know what? Let's go have lunch
Yeah, you're
together.
always gonna fall back on that.
Go stay in a hotel then if you want to do that. But yeah, just go alone and yeah, once you cross that threshold of like I can talk to anyone, I can hang out with anyone, then yeah, things really change.
How did you two meet?
Oh yeah, so Yona and I we met in Bali in 2019. It was actually towards the end of my trip. I was gonna go to Australia the next day, and she had just arrived from Thailand. And then yeah, I when you see her last night, obviously you want to do fun stuff. And then I just asked her if she wanted to come with us to the party, and we didn't even meet for more than 24 hours actually. So because I had a flight the next day, and yeah, she just arrived in Bali, and she had like 3 more weeks there or something. So it was very interesting actually because we just decided to stay in touch, and then we decided that time I already sort of knew that I was gonna quit my job. So we decided that we would travel Bali again in a couple of months. We did just that, and then we went to the Philippines. So yeah, we just basically
Cool.
stayed in touch, and
So you met in
yeah,
person at a hostel?
yeah, I don't
And
know. Oh
then
yeah,
and then
yeah,
like you
yeah,
so then you kind of guys hit it off enough that you stayed connected, had conversations, developed a relationship at a distance, and then
yeah,
cool. And that's been 3, 4 years? Been a while,
years.
right? 3 years. Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, all goes back to yeah, the scary stuff, it was scary. I mean, before your first solo experience at a hostel, it
Yeah.
was fucking scary because what if no one's gonna talk to me?
Yeah,
What if
it is.
people don't like me? Yeah, there's a lot of what ifs, but what if I also have fun? People forget to ask this question. They always think about like, what if no one hates me out, but what if you also have fun? Yeah,
Yeah.
don't forget about that part.
Yep. And the book that I need to finish and publish, Scary Equals Happy, is like all about that, about how if it's not going to kill you and if it's not super, super, super dangerous and it's scary, if you do it, there's a very good chance you're going to have an amazing adventure experience, learning like something you'll grow. And yeah, I think traveling alone, staying at hostels by yourself, meeting people is really scary. But why? What's going to happen to you? You're going to get shot. You're going to get like, there's no danger. What's our,
Oh,
our brain? Our brain is just lying to us, right? And there's so much to learn and people to meet.
There's Yeah, it goes back to like even the coffee meetings. It's so asymmetrical. The upside is so asymmetrical that yeah, what's the worst thing? You're gonna feel embarrassed. So what? Like, but obviously easier said than done. Yeah, but the upside, who knows? Who knows? You might meet your next business partner there. You might meet your girlfriend or boyfriend there.
You still have a habit of meeting new people.
Yeah. Well, now it's kind of different. It's been a while since I've stayed at a hostel actually. But yeah, now I feel like a conversation, it would be so awkward before if I didn't have the experience of yeah, like being alone and having to navigate a social situation. Because you kind of get sort of very self-aware and emotional intelligent and more emotionally intelligent
Yeah.
where you can read a situation if it's already
Yeah.
appropriate to bring up this topic, if the conversation is warm enough already. I don't know. I don't think there's a. It's like an instinct. You just know that okay, probably it's not a good time to
Yeah.
ask
It's a
someone.
social intelligence. And
Yeah,
you gotta build that
there's no script for this. You have just have enough conversations and
data.
then you know.
All right, cool. So toward wrapping up, and always love having conversations with you and wish we could just keep talking forever, but let's ask these questions as we wrap up. If you think about how you see yourself now compared to, let's say, 5 years ago, what are a few of the things that you are the happiest about that have changed? Yeah, what's different that you like about yourself?
Well, now love that I'm a lot more confident in my abilities, and also like my limits. So, example, like when I try to understand something, I know when I actually understand it, like I can consume content confidently, but I also can be honest enough that okay, I didn't understand it enough yet. I probably have to do more research or like,
Mm,
yeah. Now I'm like more like I'm intellectually honest now in a way.
nice.
None of these would have happened if I didn't have that experience of the weed and like having that freedom. Just the taste of freedom is very important because, at the end of the day, we're just all living lives here, having fun. And if you can't live an examined, and free life, or at least life that you're truly satisfied about, like not just to impress people, I don't think it's going to be that fun if we just can't enjoy and accept ourselves for who we are. So I think that was very important because none of these would have happened. Like that really preceded everything, like having to experience that intrinsic freedom and then having to expand it externally. So if you don't have that intrinsic confidence yet, it's either you're going to pursue the wrong things or you're just going to feel confused as long as possible. So that's really not cool. But yeah, your question was, what do I feel good about?
Yeah,
Like,
compare yourself to how you see yourself now compared to, how you remember kind of seeing yourself, let's say 3, 4, 5 years ago. Like what are some of the things you said? Confidence. That's fine. Anything else that pops into your head that you think's really changed? Big difference between then and now?
yeah, being it's also just related to confidence, like being an independent thinker in a way. Like I can really like pick apart my ideas and be completely honest with them. Like, okay,
Yeah.
what is real? What is not? Why do I believe? Do I have good reasons in believing this? Like, okay.
Yeah.
And there's so many things we can talk about still. Like, we haven't even got into like philosophy or like a free will or psychedelics or religion. So many things we can have conversation for days,
I agree.
but we're at the
I think
mercy of time.
that'll be
Yeah.
2.0 and advanced
Mhm.
class. All right. I love what you said about intellectual honesty. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Intellectual honest.
Intellectually honest. It's nice. All right. If you were talking to somebody who wants to take more ownership of their own learning and growth, right? It's like somebody who's thinking, okay, I really want to feel like I'm growing. I want to take more ownership of it. What do I do? Could you share like one resource? Could be a book, a YouTube channel, an influencer, something that's been a really powerful resource for you that has helped you emerge as who you are now.
Oh, I would highly recommend the book Lying by Sam Harris, which actually I discovered through you. But it's a bit tricky because he's also a very smart guy who can write really well. You might have to reread it twice or something, but the message is very clear. Like
Yeah,
once you commit to telling the truth and just
honesty.
honesty, things really change. Because if you're pursuing something, it's like it saves you a lot of time. Like okay, you try to be something that you clearly aren't, or you are working a
Yeah,
job that you're not happy about. It's like
yeah,
honesty really, because if you're honest to yourself, you also invite people to be honest with you. So for instance, you wouldn't hesitate giving me feedback because you know that I would want nothing more than facts or truth or the truth. You could tell me like, okay, man, like honestly, you've been putting a lot of work into that project, but it's probably not as good as you think it is. Like really having that feedback ASAP. Like you want that. But if you yourself are avoiding that, then people will also hold back in giving you like honest feedback because they don't want to hurt you. Or people care about you, but
yeah.
this can really extend to every other aspect of your life. Yeah. Once to being honest to yourself, then people will notice that you also don't want to waste their time.
Nice.
I guess
Yeah,
I'm lying, but
and
the
it's a short.
audiobook is also pretty good. So I guess two options.
Okay, lying. So Miguel recommends weed and lying.
Yeah. Read and lie.
Disclaimers. We're gonna need disclaimers here. The opinions of the guests do not necessarily represent the opinions of the organization. But I will say about that book, it's a short read, and Sam Harris, I think he's a very clear writer, and yes, he uses powerful language, but I think it's relatively simple language. I think anybody can understand. All right, cool. Well, thank you, Miguel, so much for this conversation today. I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to ask you some more questions later. But looking forward to
Mhm.
next time we talk. And
Oh, let's definitely do a 2.0, and then we go for the more interesting topics.
all right, sounds good.
Backstory has been exposed already.
Sounds good. All right, talk soon. Thank you so much for listening to this interview on Emerge Stories. We really hope that something here sparked your curiosity or maybe helped you think about something in your life just from a little bit of a different angle or perspective, maybe opened up your mind to something you might be able to do in your life to take more ownership of your own learning and growth. That's the goal of this show. So please join our community, like and share, and tell other people about these stories if they're meaningful for you. And thanks so much for being here.